What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to Film Theory, which of the Incredibles is the most incredible. Now, this is by the film theorist who I have not reacted to before, but I am familiar with the film theory. Stop spitting! Oh, that's going to be a rough video. I am familiar with the film theorist's videos, but anyway, hopefully I'm going to enjoy this. Hopefully you guys are as well. I'm not really sure if I'm going to keep reacting to the film theorist videos. It all depends if you guys will enjoy this, but yeah, anyway, with that being said, the original link's in the description. Make sure you go subscribe to the film theorist, and without any further ado, let's begin. Also, as a side note, I think the most incredible out of the Incredibles is the baby.
Everyone's special, Dash, which is another way of saying no one is.
Fine, have it your way, Dash. Let's pit you against your family in a battle to the death to see which special is the most special of all the specials.
It's time for a death battle!
Woo! As I said, I think the baby is the best out of them all.
Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the only show that can monologue longer than a villain in a superhero movie.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe it.
Today I'm covering what's perhaps the most beloved movie in Pixar's lineup, The Incredibles. A film that probably earned that title because a lot of you watching saw it when you were kids.
It's so true. When I saw that movie, when did it come out? In like 2008 or 2010-ish or something? I remember when it first came out. And freaking, I think next year is the year when the sequel's coming out. Like, what's that, over a decade later or something? Like, that's crazy. But it's finally, you know, time that they came out with a sequel, because the first one was awesome.
The fact that, in retrospect, is a bit alarming considering what the movie's really about. I mean, for a family-friendly film, you have a villain that actually kills people, a wife that suspects that her husband is cheating, and repeated deaths by engine turbine. I've always thought that it had a weird message too, where Buddy, the young fanboy who's shunned by his hero, pulls himself up by his bootstraps to become a billionaire weapons designer, using his genius intellect to create devices that give him the power of a superhero himself, which honestly is a story arc that should be praised.
I know, it's a great story arc. That's why they should have made another one freaking sooner than waiting a decade.
I gotta say, as the one who felt ostracized throughout school, I totally relate to this guy's story. He should be a good role model. He didn't give up. He used his innate abilities to get better, to get to the position where he wanted to be. But instead, in this movie, he has an inferiority complex and becomes a sociopathic killer.
You mean you killed off real heroes so that you could pretend to be one?
Oh, I'm real, and I did it without your precious gifts, your oh-so-special powers.
Hey.
He's like a Batman, kind of. Well, not like, you know, a bad Batman, but as in, you know, he doesn't actually have any powers. He's just smart and develops things that give him those kind of abilities, right?
Pixar, I totally feel what you're going for here, but seriously, intelligence should be a real superpower. But nope, not in The Incredibles, and then the rest of the film treats him like a joke, until he dies a gruesome death and the heroes are all solidified as the ones who are born with their innate abilities. Clearly, this movie believes that some people are just more super than others. And since you killed off the character I most relate to, movie, I'm going full supervillain and giving you a dose of your own medicine. Which super is the most super in
the baby, there he is!
Our family. Who is the most powerful Incredible? Is it the speed demon Dash, the quiet psychic Violet, the flexible Elastigirl, or the brute force of Mr. Incredible? There's also the baby Jack, the big wild card in the family whose powers seem to vary from setting himself on fire to change. Exactly,
that's why. When Jack is older, he'll be the most incredible, because he can do so much, right? So that's why I think Jack is the best. End of discussion!
Changing to different materials, you could say he's a regular Jack of all trades. But knowing how Hollywood storytelling works, and based on the fact that the trailers are already playing all this up, it probably means he's gonna be revealed to be the most powerful character in Incredibles 2, so I'm knocking him out of the competition.
What?! This is unfair. This is unfair. If we're discluding him, then it's a whole other kettle of fish? Is that the expression? you know, it's a whole other argument altogether in regards to who's the most incredible of the Incredibles.
In the meantime, though, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, because 4 Incredibles enter, 1 Incredible leaves. Man, I really am starting to sound like Syndrome.
Everyone can be super, and when everyone's super, no one will be.
First things first, if you want to talk about raw strength, then you have to talk about Mr. Incredible. Even if Bob Parr has put on a few pounds since retiring from his superhero days, he is still a hunk of muscle, tossing around cars the same way most of us would toss around a Frisbee. Well, I guess if he were really throwing the car like I throw a Frisbee, it would mean he would throw the car, and it would immediately crush.
I wonder if there's like was it rule 34 or rule 42? I don't know, but you know the rule where if it exists, there is, of it. So I wonder if there's, you know, rule 34 or whatever of Mr. Incredible. I wouldn't be surprised.
Karate chop down into the ground and then roll around on its edge in a direction completely opposite the thing I was trying to throw it at, just rubbing the shame in my face as it rolls. But where we really see him start to push his powers to their limits is when he halts a train traveling at full speed right in its tracks. To figure out how much force he needs to stop that train, we need to know 2 things. The train's deceleration, how quickly he was able to bring that train to a halt, and the train's mass. Calculating the train's mass is a bit difficult because for the brief moments that the train is actually seen on screen, we never see how many train cars there are. However, with a bit of historical research, we can actually come up with a pretty good guess on how many train cars there were, how much they weighed, and
yeah, you just do the average. You just do the average.
How fast the train would have to have been moving. In order to determine the mass of each railway car, we can compare it to a similar railway car in the real world. In the movie, we see Bob reading a copy of the Metroville Tribune, which, when you zoom in real close, shows that the second half of this movie is set in the year 1962.
I didn't know that. This is from the 1960s? It was based in the 1960s? I did not know that.
Train stopping scene happens in the movie's opening moments before a 15 years later flash forward, meaning that that scene with the train happens in 1947. Details also point to the city of Metroville being based on Chicago. The font and name of the newspaper make it look like a tribute to the famous Chicago Tribune. And Chicago is a metropolitan city that had a booming economy during the time period of the movie. More importantly, Chicago's also famous for its L train, short for elevated train, that served as a citywide rapid transit system since 1892. Based on the year the movie takes place and the appearance of the cars, they appear to be the Metroville equivalent of the Chicago L train's steel 5000 series cars, which were in service from
It's a lot of work to find out what, you know, what kind of train it was. I was just gonna say take the average train, and that'll give you an average of how much the train he stopped would have weighed.
1947 to 1985. We also know, based on historical research, that the 5000 series of car had an unloaded weight of 93,000 pounds,
wow,
plus another 14,688 pounds from the weight of all the passengers inside. And yes, I calculated that using the average weight of a person in 1950, which I might note is over 20 pounds lighter than the average weight for a person in the year 2000. Hey, you have to account for everything when it comes to historical accuracy, and also our ever-expanding waistlines. Lastly,
yeah, well, see, back then, McDonald's was not as popular as it is today.
The length of the train. In the scene, we're able to count
if it even existed in the 1960s. I don't think McDonald's existed in the 1960s. That would explain a lot.
11 visible railway cars, and based on everything we know about elevated trains in the 1940s, which is a surprisingly large amount after doing this episode, the train probably wouldn't be any longer than that. In fact, it was uncommon for trains to be longer than 6 cars during commuter hours way back then. All of that gives us a grand total of 1,184,568 pounds for the mass of the train. That is 592 tons. Mr. Incredible certainly has a lot of work to do, and work he does. He brings that train from 55 miles per hour to a screeching halt in just under 10 seconds. 9.9 seconds if we want to be exact. To do that to a 592-ton train, he'd need to exert a force of 1,333,000 newtons. That's the equivalent of 299,670 pounds of force. Just for comparison, a study of 70 boxers found that elite-level fighters punch with an average of 776 pounds of force, with the strongest one ever not being able to reach 1,300 pounds of force. Bob's?
See, that's why you don't mess with Bob.
punch, by comparison, would be 230 times stronger than that. They don't call him Mr. Incredible for nothing, and with that, 1,333,000 newtons of force is our number to beat. Next up is Helen Parr.
But what do you mean that's the number to beat? Because all of these, you know, superheroes, they don't all have the same strength. This isn't a strength comparison. Like, you know, Helen here, she's like friggin' elastic, right? So that has nothing to do with strength. She might not be strong, but she's elastic. And Bob, the husband, isn't elastic. So you can't compare the two when it comes to, you know, strength. You have to compare them by how useful are their talents or, you know, abilities, and what kind of, I guess, good they can do, I guess.
AKA Mom, AKA Elastigirl. Measuring Elastigirl's strength is a bit trickier here, since she's not really about raw strength, but rather raw stretch. We never really get to see her stretched to her limits, haha, but we do get to see how flexible her abilities are. Badoom-ching, alright, I'm done with the puns. She has a parachute mode, boat mode, hovercraft mode, limbo mode, shield offspring from oncoming homing missile explosion mode. Hold up, completely shielding the kids from an explosion of a homing missile? Yikes! If her body is able to go full Groot and repel the force of an explosion like that—
Full Groot. Bravo with that reference.
Protecting what's inside, it must be pretty strong. And based on her passing out in the aftermath of the explosion, it's pushing her powers to their limits, so that is the scene we're gonna analyze. But just how strong is she? Let's look at the missiles. We don't actually see any other aircraft in the vicinity, so it looks like these are gonna be surface-to-air missiles, SAMs, as opposed to air-to-air missiles. But how powerful are they? Well, when it comes to surface-to-air missiles, the explosive yield will ultimately depend on the warhead it's carrying, but faster usually means more powerful. I mean, the fastest missiles in the world are ICBMs, which can reach speeds of over Mach 15.
That's crazy. But, like, how can you compare her elastic powers to Bob's strength powers? Like, it just doesn't make sense. You can't compare them because they're so unique. You can say that she's strong by doing this math and whatever to get down to it, but they're so unique in the power that she can do things that Bob cannot do. So, and we're talking about incredible. You know, who's the most incredible, not who's the strongest. And when it comes down to it, I think, you know, the mom is actually more incredible than, you know, Bob, because she can do so much more than Bob. Bob just has strength. She can do so much more.
15 times the speed of sound, and they're usually designed to carry nuclear warheads. It's a scary thought. Anyway, from the way that the missiles appear to only barely outspeed the plane, we can assume that they're probably moving at close to the same rate. Now, a typical commercial jet would be able to hit speeds of around 600 miles per hour, which is subsonic. Less than the speed of sound, not even Mach 1. And we never actually see Helen's plane cross any sound barriers, even as she's trying to avoid these missiles. So that means that the missiles must be moving pretty slowly. Currently, the slowest and typically weakest surface-to-air missiles used by the US military still hit a speed of around Mach 2.5, which means I guess Syndrome's weapons budget was more focused on building killer robots and not so much on buying anti-aircraft missiles. Information on this subject is a bit hard to find, and digging around for it has undoubtedly put me back on top of several government watch lists. There goes my trusted traveler pass I worked a year to get, but out of all the missiles—
Although it's a joke, it's probably true. It's probably really true.
Used by the US military, the slowest one is the RIM-116 Rolling Airframe Missile, RAM. A missile delivering a warhead with an explosive yield equivalent of 47.279 megajoules, or just around 24.9 pounds of TNT. But here's where things get even more complicated. In the scene, we see not one, not two, but 3 missiles. Also, Elastigirl isn't even the first thing the explosion hits, impacting the plane before even hitting her. Also, we have to consider the fact that Elastigirl isn't at the epicenter of the explosion when the missiles go off. This all matters because what we think of as an explosion is basically just a shock wave that gets weaker and weaker as you move away from the epicenter. And this drop-off happens exponentially. So this time, we're just gonna have to do some rough estimations. If we estimate that the plane's main body, or fuselage, is 10—
Oh my goodness, the amount of like math and stuff you're doing for it is insane. And currently, I think the, you know, the stuff you're doing for it is pointless. Because although it's cool, like what you're doing for it, at the end of the day, it's still not telling us who's more incredible. It's telling us who's stronger, which makes no sense because we're talking about who's more incredible here, not who's stronger.
Centimeters thick aluminum, standard for a typical Boeing aircraft, and we use what we know about the impact strength of aluminum and estimate Elastigirl's distance from the initial explosion at around 3 meters based on the size and shape of the cabin and where we see the missile impact the aircraft. Elastigirl's body is absorbing a whopping 3,510,000 pounds of force. That is more than 10 times as much force as we calculated for Mr. Incredible to stop that moving train.
What did I say? I freaking told you Helen was more incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a new front runner, and a new definition of girl power, and a new definition of Wonder Woman. Okay, I'll stop. Up next is Flash. I mean Dash, the speedster of the family.
He's the, he's the off-brand Flash.
Who knows though, maybe Incredibles 2 will feature Reverse Dash, complete with a yellow costume. They could even completely rip off the Flash and recreate that time that the Flash was shot with a fat ray, kidnapped and then put on display as the 1,000-pound blunder, like some sort of freak show.
Did that actually happen in the Flash? If that was made in today's society, oh, whoever wrote that would have been fired.
Ah, you get it? Because he's obese now. Yikes, the 60s were a very different time. Anyway, Dash demonstrates his super speed a lot throughout the movie, but believe it or not, the greatest feat of speed that we actually see him pull off is when he rushes up to his teacher's desk to place a thumbtack on the seat, then rushes back to his seat.
This little rat is guilty! He's guilty! You can see it on his smug little face. Guilty, I say guilty!
Hey dude, calm down. Why are you freaking out? It's just a prank, bro. Don't be a prick about it.
Some Ethan Bradbury? Bradbury?
Get it? Prick? Because it's a thumbtack? Anyway, the teacher, determined to catch Dash in the act, has a surveillance camera record the incident, and for a single frame of the video, we see Dash moving. If we assume that the video is recording at 24 frames per second, as most video cameras did back in 1962, that would mean Dash was covering a distance of about 4 meters in just 1/24th of a second. That translates to a speed of 96 meters per second, or
1962. In 1962, weren't like the cameras in that like massive, like huge? So that right there means that he couldn't have put a camera to spy the room or whatever because the camera would have been so freaking massive.
114 miles per hour. But does that give Dash the ability to topple his mother's strength? Earlier, we saw Mr. Incredible stop a speeding L train, but could he stop Dash running towards him at top speed? Well, what's most impressive about Dash isn't his speed so much as it is his acceleration. The fastest sports cars on Earth take around 2 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour. Dash is able to go from 0 to 214 miles per hour, stop, and then reverse his direction to get back to his seat again in just a tiny fraction of a second. Literally less than the blink of an eye. I ran the numbers and he's accelerating at a rate of 9,216 meters per second squared.
Wow.
To figure out whether Dash can actually topple his father, we use...
What's that in like feet per second? That's extremely fast. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, you know, if he were to get hit by a train, he would survive or anything like that. One with his mother and father, you know, they probably would survive. So although the kid might be fast, that doesn't mean he's more incredible.
It's one of my favorite equations of all time on the show, FMA, or force equals mass times acceleration, to solve for the force that Dash is creating. We just found his acceleration. Now multiply that by the average mass for a 10-year-old boy, which is about 72 pounds or 32.5 kilograms, and we find out that Dash's speedy little legs are generating 299,500 newtons of thrust, the equivalent of 67,300 pounds of force, which is more thrust than the engine of a Boeing 747 commercial jetliner. With force and speed like that, perhaps his most amazing super ability is the fact that he's able to get away with that tack prank. He should be causing a massive wind that sends papers, at the very least, flying throughout the classroom. Anyway, at just under 300,000 newtons, he's still a million newtons.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Yeah, little junior. You're nothing compared to your parents.
Away from the raw strength of his father. To match the force of his dad, Dash would need to put on a few pounds. A few hundred pounds, in fact. Starting with that 1.3 million newton threshold we calculated for dear old dad and dividing by Dash's acceleration, he'd need...
I'm calling it right now. I think the mother, as I said earlier on, the mother is the best out of them all because of she can do so much. And I'm not like even comparing it to, you know, the ability of strength and whatnot. I'm just saying she can do so much that makes her the most incredible, right?
Need to weigh in at 141 kilograms or 310 pounds to tackle his father, and way more than that to punch through his mother's elasticity. 837 pounds, or a whopping 380 kilograms. Where is a good politically incorrect flash fat ray when you need it? And then there was one. 14-year-old Violet, the bashful, shy girl who wants nothing more than to reject her superpowers and be normal herself. Now, she's a tricky one since her powers aren't physical like anyone else in her family. First, the girl who wants to hide from the world can, appropriately enough, turn invisible. But more to our purposes, she can create force fields capable of blocking pretty much anything. And you can't have a force field without the word force. The exact...
So you're gonna measure the force of stuff hitting the force field, and that's gonna give you the idea of how much force she can exert or something like that. So I guess that's how he's gonna compare it, but at the same time, actually she might be the most incredible. Like, she can do stuff with her mind, which like no one else can do. So that's friggin' incredible, right? And although the mother's really flexible and can do a lot of incredible stuff too, the daughter might be the most incredible because she can make force fields and turn invisible, okay? That's incredible.
Measurement we've been using to compare the family. We find out about 90 minutes into the movie that Violet's force fields can easily deflect bullets. Using the performance of a standard issue M16 rifle as reference with a 960 meter per second muzzle velocity, 4.02 grams mass per bullet, and an estimated stopping distance of 0.01 meters, the protective bubble she's creating is acting with 83,288 pounds of force, 370,000 newtons. That alone.
Although I think the daughter is the most, like, incredible, I still think the mom's gonna win. I think the mom's gonna win, but in terms of actual incredibleness, I think the daughter has the most incredible powers.
Alone puts her ahead of her brother when it comes to raw strength, but it's not even close to the full extent of her force field's power.
You have more power than you realize. And don't worry, if the time comes, you'll know what to do. It's in your blood.
In the final battle against Syndrome's Omnidroid version 10, she pulls out her strongest force field to protect Dash from the giant robot. The Omnidroid 10 is a metal sphere with a hull thickness of about ½ a meter and a diameter of about 39.6 meters. And we know this by comparing it to the size of the buildings we see it next to, where it appears to be about 12 stories high. Accounting for the fact that the Omnidroid appears to be mostly hollow inside, the metal part alone would have a volume of 2,402 cubic meters. That amount of steel would have a mass of 1.85 times 10 to the 7th kilograms, or...
I can't get over how much math you do for this. Like, this is why you need to stay in school, kids. So you can calculate the mass of a giant evil robot.
For 40,780,000 pounds. Newton's third law, you know, the one that says that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, tells us that if Violet is supporting an object that weighs 40 million pounds, then her force field has to exert an upward force of 40 million.
Oh, I guess Violet wins, which I can accept that because she has much cooler powers than her mom.
Pounds, 181,398,476,000 newtons. That is nearly 180 times the force that her father used to stop that train, and over 10 times what her mom withstood in the plane explosions. And that's not even calculating the fact that the robot is slamming its body into the force field, which means that we have unequivocally found our strongest incredible. It is dear old Dad.
You little... What? Yes, yes, of course. Of course it is the dad for strength. For strength, but we're not freaking talking about strength. We're talking about incredible. Like, what's more incredible? And that is between the mother and the daughter, because we're not including the kid for whatever reason.
Yeah. The force field would make Violet the strongest incredible by an enormous margin if it weren't for the fact that several seconds later, when Violet passes out from the effort of holding up that object, we see her father step in to save the day by lifting up the exact same Omnidroid and
Oh, wow, look at that. Look at that. Look at that plot twist. You should have included that earlier.
Violet, he's able to sustain that weight without passing out from the efforts. But that's impossible, I hear you saying. I said it too when I was researching this episode. Violet has to be the strongest. From our calculations, Mr. Incredible holding up that robot takes more than 100 times the amount of force that we saw him use to stop the train at the start of the movie.
How is that impossible then? I mean, you just used the wrong source for the beginning. It's like measuring my strength by me lifting up a 5-pound dumbbell and saying, oh, well, this is how strong I am. No, I can lift a lot more than that, but you just didn't use that for your calculation. So that's like him right here doing the train thing, and you use that to see how strong he is. But no, really, this is what you should have used in the first place. I mean, you just used the wrong source for your math in the beginning.
And it's not like he wasn't trying when it came to stopping that train. He knew that there were a lot of lives at stake, and he barely managed to stop it before it fell off the rails. So how is it that we see him so much stronger at the end of the movie, especially when we know that this is after 15 years of him being out of service as a super? Well, maybe this heroic feat of strength is chalked up to the greatest superpower of them all, family.
Love.
Ugh, gag me. Cut it out with your family kumbaya nonsense, you hippies. But seriously, seeing his children's lives at stake, Bob leaps to their defense and
It's like that, you know, the mother can lift up a car to save her son kind of situation, where you have this incredible strength, and it's, I guess, fueled mostly from adrenaline and emotions, I guess. That's where the strength comes from.
Provides the most monumental demonstration of strength that we see throughout the entire movie. This is actually known as hysterical strength, a display of extreme strength by humans beyond what's believed to be normal, usually occurring when people are in life and death situations. This is most commonly associated with stories of parents lifting vehicles to save their kids. In
what did I just say?
In this case, it's Bob Parr lifting a giant death droid to save his kids. Scientific evidence to prove it is scarce, since, as you can imagine, it's a bit hard to test this sort of thing in a lab. Hey, we're gonna put your kid under a car. Go lift it! But it is theoretically possible, believed to be tied to the body increasing adrenaline production in times of crisis. So Violet is definitely number one, unless parental instincts come into play. And you know what? That seems like a fitting climax for a movie that's ultimately more about family bonds than it is about superpowers. Sometimes
Alright, so
it takes the family to save the day. And even though Dash and Violet might not be as strong as their dad, in a way, they were indirectly responsible for his greatest feat of strength.
Like, of course the dad is the strongest. But that doesn't mean you're the most incredible, right? It's like comparing a basketball to an apple. Like, they're so different in their own way, and they're both good in their own way, that you can't really compare them. And that's the situation here. You can't really, you know, say which one is better, because they both do unique things. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you want me to do more reactions to the film Theorist. But with that being said, if you did like it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, possibly share with a friend. If you're new, hit subscribe to join the family today. I'll see you guys next time. Boop!